All right, my beautiful friends, we just pressed the Let's Go Live button over here on our end, which means we got to wait for the tubes to fire up all across the fruited plain of the interwebs before we go ahead and get started, because we have got a jury which is thinking about it. And before we jump into it, want to make sure we're live on YouTube, on Rumble, on Locals, on Dasher, on Prancer, on Telegram, and all the other places. It looks like we've connected. That's tremendous news. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about the Trump trial, and the jurors are thinking about it. They have sent in 2 notes during their deliberations into Judge Juan Merchan out of New York. We're going to see what those 2 notes look like because they are very interesting. Certainly seems like the jury is playing one of 2 games here, and we're going to analyze what's happening. Are they playing a 34-piece puzzle where they're just taking all the puzzle pieces and trying to put them in various locations? Count 34, does it belong here? Is count 32 a side piece? Did Donald Trump sign that check in 32? Is that a 35 or is that 16? Or where does it go? Put that one over here. Are they playing a puzzle? Or are they playing Where's Waldo? Are they looking for something very specific, trying to zoom in and find something that might settle the entire case? Something dispositive. For example, what happens if they throw out Michael Cohen's entire testimony because the instructions allow them to do that? Well, could be pretty important for Trump's defense. So we'll ask ourselves, what game are they playing? 2 notes have come in, and we'll also see exactly what the jury instructions look like. Donald Trump came into court this morning, didn't say much on his way in, but did have some statements in the aftermath. And so we'll see how things unfolded, courtesy of Inner City Press. But today we do also have the actual jury instructions. Those have dropped. And so basically the judge just read through these for a solid hour. So we'll go through them, see what's inside. This is exactly what the jury heard, but the judge is not going to be giving them a copy because he is trying to bury the mechanics, the rules. He doesn't want the people playing the game to have the rule book so they know how to unpack all this. So of course, we'll unpack it here. I want to go through the various elements of false business records. Might sound like heavy lifting, but I think it's important because the jury really can pick from this smorgasbord, this buffet of potential criminality. They say, as long as they think Trump intended to commit or conceal some other type of crime, which in this case would have been fraudulent or unlawful means of impacting a New York election, then that would satisfy all of the criminal elements of the case. But the problem is the jurors can decide any one of these. They can just pick whatever they want. Doesn't even have to be unanimous, as we'll see in the instructions themselves. So we'll go through the instructions, see what's inside. We'll hear what Fox News was reporting about this, and Andy McCarthy, legal commentator, and Andrew Weissmann. You know him. Well, guess what? He's got a fever, and the only cure is more Judge Juan Merchan. He's got a little bit of a man crush on him, which I know is shocking to all of you who have heard Andrew Weissmann ever speak. Like, wow, a man crush? You're kidding. Shocking. Who would have thunk? So we'll listen to him, and then we'll cleanse the palate with some Alina, Habba in the house. So that's all coming up in our first segment. Then in our second segment, Judge Merchan is under congressional fire. So while this whole travesty of justice is underway, Congress is looking into this fella. Problem is, he has been appointed to basically every single Trump case that's ever come across New York. It's like, hey, a new Trump case is going to be on the docket. Let's randomly assign it to some judge. Oh, weird. It's Judge Merchan basically every time. He's like, again? Another Trump case? How weird is that? Well, Representative Elise Stefanik wants to get into it. She says, this is a little bit of a problem. No one believes it's random. Everyone thinks this is part of a hatchet job. coming from New York officials. And so she sent in a formal complaint against Judge Juan Merchan, and that went to the Judicial Commission of New York. We'll see what she says inside. We also have J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance sent a letter to Merrick Garland over from the United States Senate. He's saying he's also looking into this. And so we'll see if Garland throws that one in the toilet with the other letters. Marco Rubio also jumping out into this one. He didn't send a letter, which he's probably working on. Feels like all the VP candidates are kind of getting their ducks in a row. Like, oh crap, did you get your complaint letter in? Trump wants those due by Friday. Friday? I thought he said next Friday. No, this Friday. It's due this Friday. Get your letters in. Oh crap, did Elise Stefanik get her letter in? Yeah, she got it in already. She was the first one. Elise, gosh dang it, she's always the first. So Marco Rubio is sending his in. All of them going out to, and they're, they should be complaining. And then we'll wrap it up with NBC. NBC says, the defense did a pretty good job on this whole thing, which is true because the case is rigged. So we've got two amazing segments to get to today. We're going to go through the jury instructions. It's going to be a little bit excellent. You're going to be so happy that we've done this because these are the rules that the jurors are going to be following, and they want to hear them again. They won't even get copies of them. So we got a bunch to get into today, my friends. Before we do, there's some other news out there. You've probably seen this about bird flu. Check this out. 4.2 million infected chickens got to go. Culled in Iowa. That's a lot of chickens. It's like it's a lot of chickens, but it's not as many pieces of paper as Trump has in his January 6th discovery case. So 4.2 million chickens is really about half, or really a third, honestly, of the 12 million pages in the Trump discovery case. But here's the thing. There's a outbreak among chicken flocks and dairy cows. 2 cases of the virus have appeared in people. Not good. Despite ongoing testing, they were okay. Their symptoms were relieved with over-the-counter flu medication. So that's good news. Now, it's always good to be prepared. We don't know what the heck is coming down the pike. One way we can be prepared is with our friends over at The Wellness Company. We remember the last pandemic, it was a little bit of a mess. Some of us were unprepared. Not going to happen this time, though. Our friends at The Wellness Company have a prescription contagion emergency kit. The only kit of its kind comes from The Wellness Company, provides you with a carefully selected assortment, various different medications inside. You got the ivermectin, the hydroxychloroquine, all sorts of stuff, budesonide, nebulizer, because you never know what you're going to need when you're going to need it. And it comes with a guidebook to explain how to use it all. This is backed by research from people like Dr. Peter McCullough. You know who he is. And this is a kit that every American should have. Very simple to get. Go to twc.health/Robert. Link down in the description. You can save when you use promo code Robert, and you'll get free shipping. So make sure you enter code Robert at checkout. It's a prescription kit, twc.health/Robert. Kits are only available in the USA, and it's better to be prepared. As we always say, better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, as they say. So check that out. Links down in the description below. And now, my friends, without any further ado, let's get into it because we've got a jury that now has the case. Let's see what's inside. Jurors now demand more from Judge Juan Merchan. They've got the case. They're deliberating. The fate of Donald Trump's freedom, according to Judge Juan Merchan, is now at stake. Is he going to be a convicted felon? Yes or no? Problem is the jury doesn't really have a lot of information about how the rules apply. They heard a bunch of nonsense from liars like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, and they're supposed to apply the rules to the facts that they observed. But they're not going to be getting a copy of the jury instructions, which is a strange thing. We don't really know what the heck's going on in New York. A lot of strange things happening here. But in most cases that we've talked about and covered here, and in my own experience and practice, juries get copies of the instructions so that they can understand, what the law is, so that they have the elements of the offense that they can measure the facts against. How can they just remember all of it when some judge spouts it off in the middle of the courtroom? So when we were listening to this, we saw that CNN reported this. Judge Merchan says that the jury instructions, he's going to read it, and we'll go through what he read, and it's going to take an hour. but the jurors are not going to get copies of any of it. What? So I guess they're just going to be taking notes on the whole thing? But they may request that Mercan read them back to them, either in whole or in part. Why might they do this? Well, because they don't want the jury to see the mechanics of it. They don't want the jury to zoom in on anything and use that as an excuse to say, oh no, sorry, this case needs to go. There's a lot of money to be made in the madness. It's a confusopoly, to use a Dilbert Scott Adams term. Everything's confusing. So the jury just goes, oh, FECA, New York law, New York tax law, object crime, predicate crime. No one knows. So the judge is hiding the instructions from them. It would be very useful for them to have the instructions. How do we know that? Because they asked for him to read it again, as we'll see. Now, they may request a reread. They've done that. But the first question that came in from the jury came in at 2:56. The judge went through the instructions. Deliberation started. We got a jury note. A lot of ears went up. Whoa. Is this a verdict? Are they going to come out and give us a verdict? Wow. Turns out it wasn't. It was 4 requests that came out. 1, Pecker's testimony about the phone call with Trump. They want to zoom in on that transcript. What did he say? What did Pecker say about his phone call with Trump? What did he say? We also want to know about Pecker's testimony about a decision not to finalize and fund McDougal's life rights. That's a curious one. David Pecker didn't complete the deal with Droopy McDougal, who was slated to come in and testify in court, but never did, because after Stormy's testimony, they realized what a catastrophe this whole angle was. So why would the jury be asking about Pecker and the decision not to finalize the deal? Did he not finalize the deal because Trump won the presidency? Did he comment on why he didn't finalize the deal? Was he going to finalize the deal with or without the presidency? Was it related to the candidacy or the election? Or was it just something that Trump had an interest in because he wanted to protect his reputation and his wife and his livelihood, his business, and so on? I don't know. Pecker's testimony on the Trump Tower meeting. What did Pecker say that they did there or they talked about? And also Michael Cohen's testimony about the Trump Tower meeting. Now, all of these things, of course, seem, other than point number 2, have to do with Trump. What did Cohen say, or what was his involvement in Trump Tower? So the jury is maybe connecting causation. They're saying that was Trump causing these things to happen? Was Trump, did he have knowledge? Was he knowingly involved in these things because of these meetings? All good questions. And to be honest, it's all speculation. The jury could just be confused and people just have, what did they say? And I thought that guy, and so on. So there could be any various reasons for why these are coming out. But the point here that is absolutely something we can glean from this is they are thinking about it. They have not just come out and decided, of course, not guilty, which we thought was never going to happen, or guilty, which was everyone's biggest fear, that they just turn around. It's a bunch of New Yorkers, 83% Democrat voted for Alvin Bragg, who campaigned on prosecuting Trump. What if they just came out and hit it? Now, we made this point on our members only stream this morning. The fact that they're thinking about this is an L for the government right out of the gate. And they are thinking about it. They want to dig into it. They didn't buy their stupid case, hook, line, and sinker. They're like, no, we need to know a lot more. Pecker might be credible. Michael Cohen was not. Maybe that's why they want to hear more from Pecker. So the government has already failed by not getting a quick guilty verdict. The jurors are thinking about it. And they gave them everything. It's like if you bring a dog into a butcher's shop. In this analogy, the dog are the jurors. And the butcher shop with raw meat laying all over the place, those are the prosecutors. And the dog walks in, sniffs around, sees one look at Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. He's like, Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen run this butchery? That dog is a real good boy and smart. He turns right around and walks out the door and says, I'm not decided yet. I need to see where all this stuff came from. Where'd that piece of meat come from? Where'd that one come from? And even the dog has to analyze it. And that's an embarrassment to the butcher. So they're thinking about it. Now, There's also another note that came out. Update, another note. Came in 3:51 p.m. They were going to go until 4:30. The jury comes out and asks for a reread of the instructions, which Judge Mercan said you're not going to get a copy of. Now, it's unclear if they mean all of the instructions or if it's just a portion. But if it's all of them, it's going to take another hour. We're going to read it here. Now, Kyle Cheney is commenting on this. He writes for Politico. Why I clipped from him. Even he agrees with us. You know, it remains bizarre to me that the jury doesn't just get a copy of the instructions. Yeah, as they often do in other courts. Yeah, that's true. Why didn't they get one here? Is there an advantage to withholding them? Well, you might say that the jurors might haggle over the language and get confused in the legalese, and that's not their job. And the court's going to say, well, it's my job to instruct them on the legalese. It's all cope. It's all ridiculous. You explain it to them. You just read it to them. So why don't you give them a copy? They get transcripts of everything else, but you're not going to give them a transcript of what you just read to them? It's so that they can cover this up. Because the last thing they want them to do is to play Where's Waldo? And let's talk about what that means. Kyle Cheney asks, some reason this would sharpen their thinking if they have to just listen to me and write everything down real fast? How does this work? How does this work? How does this work? It's the spaghetti approach. They're just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. If you tell the jury how to disambiguate all of that, then they're going to do that. So you just keep them in the dark. So let's apply some analogies to this. Some ways to think about how this works practically. Jury panels have a bunch of different people. In this panel, we've got 2 lawyers, we've got some financial people, and a mixture of other professions. We have basically a 50-50 split. I think it's 7 men, 5 women. But what is happening in the room? They could be going through the puzzle maneuver, where they're moving pieces around, where they have different witnesses in their brains. They have different criminal offenses in their brains. They have all the rules in their notes that they're trying to sort out. And they're just splaying it all over the place, right? How do we... Okay, so if Trump signed these checks, counts 12, 13, and 15, and he signed 17, 18, and 19, we'll put those over here. You think maybe that if he signed them, they're guilty? That's your... Okay, so put those over here. And so maybe they do an initial vote. And some people say, I don't know. I think he could be guilty on some. He could be guilty on another. And that's not what we want. When we break this down, what are our options? We could have all guilty on all charges. That would be the worst case scenario. Legally speaking, I think it would be a springboard to the White House, but legally, 34 counts guilty, all counts. You could also split those, which would also be bad because a victory for them is having Trump labeled a felon. So you could have, let's say Trump gets convicted of the checks that he signed, but the other checks that he did not sign, Eric signed or Weissmann signed, he doesn't get convicted of. Okay, still a problem. I think you still see the RNC have questions about whether they can nominate a convicted felon. You still have a real big threat politically, because even if you have 1% of the independents, so-called, in this country who say, well, he was a convicted felon and I just can't bring myself to do it. Well, that's a problem. That might be the election if they rig it again too. So there's some precariousness there, but we have some other options. What happens if it's not guilty across the board? Probably unlikely for that to happen. So then we have a hung jury. And in order to get that, we got to have at least one person who is a hard acquittal on all charges. Otherwise, it's split. If they can even get that person to agree to 2 counts or 3 counts. What about that one? What about that one? Then they still get that felony conviction. So you got to have a hung or a not guilty. So you could have a situation where they're doing this puzzle piece. They're saying, is that an end piece? Is this an end piece? How does it work? They're playing that game. That is a little bit of a risky position, because if you have a compromise verdict where they just give and take, they're in there for a long time, and someone says, I don't know, just show me the facts. Give me some more evidence. Give me some more details. It feels like they're playing a puzzle. They're asking for this. Well, what does Pecker say? Maybe that'll change my mind. Well, what did he say about the fund? What did he say about McDougal? What did he say about oh, maybe that will cause me to reconsider my position. So they could be playing the puzzle game, which might be a little bit risky. We don't know if that's happening. What also might be happening, somebody might be wanting to reread the jury instructions and play Where's Waldo. Think of this more as a sniper approach. I heard something that I think is dispositive. It settles the whole case. One juror says, I heard the judge say that I could listen to Michael Cohen, and if he lied, then I can disregard his entire testimony. And I want to make sure that's in the jury instructions so that when I see that, I can tell you I'm disregarding all of Cohen's test like a sniper. Boom, I'm looking for that phrase. Where's Waldo? Found him. That's my justification to now stand firm. And then other people are now going to try to reverse that juror. Or you could have it the other way, right? Somebody's dug their heels in and another juror wants to hear those instructions to say, no, you're wrong on that. Here's why you are legally incorrect. So reread the instructions. So jurors could be searching for one thing to hang their hat on and going in like snipers to target it. But either way, they are thinking about it. And this is good news. I got to imagine Trump's defense team is very happy about that when that first note comes out and we have a possibility of a verdict being rendered. We all kind of waited and held our breath. But they're thinking about it, and they are now gone for the day. So there will be more deliberations ahead. And let's get into what happened today, now that we know that there are questions that came about. Trump was in court. He did not
speak to cameras today, but you
just gave the old fist pump.
Wave and the fist bump and a little bit of that before going into that courtroom where the jury will be given the instructions. Welcome to a brand new go. The
gold tie, looking sharp, Mr. President. And so let's see what happened in court today. As per usual, we're going to start off with Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee reporting, but then the judge just became a AI teleprompter and started reading the instructions. And so we'll just read through the instructions and rapidly do it to get through it quickly. But here's Inner City Press. Here's what he was explaining today. He says, all right, we got 1 hour in court. Judge Merchan presiding. Everybody's in court. We saw Trump walk in. He has nothing to say, but he gives us the Make America Great Again fist pump of victory. Court's in session. All rise. Judge Merchan, he is walking in, sits down. Please be seated. Clerk of the court announces, this is the time set for the people of the state of New York against Donald Trump, indictment number 2023001. Judge Merchan says, all right, good morning, government. Good morning, defense. You were both shown the verdict sheet. Anything we need to address on that before we begin today? Government says, Your Honor, we noted an omission on page 40 that we're not happy with. For the 34th count, it should say the check number in there. So there's a little bit of a missing check number in there. And so we're going to correct that before this goes over to the jury. Very well, we'll make that change. Anything else? Nothing? Okay, get the jury, please. Judge Merchan brings the jury in. I'll stand. Jury is now seated, and he begins. Merchan says, good morning, jurors. I will now instruct you on the law. Merchan reads through his instructions, and he reads them. He says, I will first review the general principles of law that apply to this case and to all criminal cases. And you've heard me explain some of those principles at the beginning of this trial, and I'm sure you can appreciate the benefits of me repeating those instructions now. Next, I will then define the criminal crimes charged in this case. I'm going to explain the law, and I'll explain the elements as well, and then I'll outline the process for your deliberations. Now, this is going to take at least an hour, and you will not receive copies of them because I don't want you to have the instruction manual. You've been here for weeks now, and this would be very helpful for you, but I want you to do what I want you to do, and if you read this in detail, you might not do that, so you don't get copies. You may, however, request that I read them back to you, in whole or in part, as many times as you wish, and I will be happy to do so. They've already done that. Now he says, during these instructions, I will not summarize the evidence. If necessary, I may refer to portions of it. But my reference to evidence or my decision not to refer to evidence doesn't mean anything. In fact, nothing I've said throughout this entire trial was meant to suggest that I have an opinion on this case. If you think I do, you can disregard that opinion. The level of my voice or intonation, says Judge Mercan, may vary during these instructions, and if I do that, it's done to help you understand. I'm trying to read like Robert De Niro. It is not done to communicate any opinion about the law or whether he is guilty. Now, it is not my responsibility to judge the evidence here. It's yours. You are the judges of the facts, and you are responsible for deciding whether Trump, the defendant, is guilty or not guilty. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, you promised to be a fair juror. A fair juror is a person who will keep their promise to be fair and will not permit the verdict to be influenced by bias, race, gender, religious practice, sexual orientation, or other things. A fair juror must be mindful of any stereotypes or attitudes and must not allow those to affect their verdict. As I've explained, we all develop and hold unconscious views, and some of those unconscious views may come from stereotypes. As a juror, you are asked to make a very important decision about another member of the community, the president. I know you would not want to make a decision based on stereotypes. Justice requires this. And jurors, you will recall that during jury selection, you agreed that you would set aside any personal biases that you might have here in favor of, you're right, or against Trump, and that you would decide this case fairly on the evidence and the law. And again, I direct you to decide this case on the evidence and the law as it relates to Trump here. Set aside your personal opinions. And remember, you may not consider or speculate about matters relating to a sentence or to any punishment. If the verdict is guilty, I will impose the sentence. Because again, we don't want jurors to feel bad about sending someone to prison for 35 years for a drug crime or something like that. Kind of makes the whole system look ridiculous, so they just keep the jurors in the dark. Makes them feel better about themselves. Now they continue, they say, when you judge the facts, you are to consider only the evidence. And the evidence in this case includes witnesses. Evidence agreed to by stipulation, which is an agreed upon exhibit. Testimony, which was stricken or which an objection was sustained, must be disregarded. So you cannot consider that. Exhibits that came in, exhibits that were just seen during trial but not coming into evidence are not available for you. But testimony based on those exhibits can be considered. It is just the exhibit itself is not available for your inspection and consideration. Testimony based on those exhibits, so all the exhibits. Now, in evaluating the evidence, you may draw inferences. What is an inference? Well, here's one. Let's say, for example, you go to bed one night. It's not raining when you lay your head down to sleep. But when you wake up in the morning, you look out your window. You do not see rain, but you see that the street and the sidewalk are wet and that people are wearing raincoats and they're carrying umbrellas. Now, under those circumstances, it may be able to infer, that is to conclude, that it rained during the night. In other words, the fact of it having rained might be inferred from the fact that people are carrying raincoats. An inference must only be drawn from a proven fact or facts that logically flow, and you can consider your experience. Now, as you know, certain things were redacted, and you can't draw any inferences from any things that were redacted. And I now want to provide you with some limiting instructions. So during the trial, I instructed you several times that certain exhibits were coming in, and they were being accepted into evidence for a limited purpose only, and that you were not to consider it for any other purpose. Now, under the law, we refer to that as a limiting instruction. I will now remind you of some of those limiting instructions. Now we get into some of the meat and potatoes of what happened in the case. He says, you will recall that you heard testimony while David Pecker was at AMI, and AMI entered into a non-prosecution agreement with federal prosecutors, as well as the FEC. And I remind you, that evidence was permitted to assist you in assessing David Pecker's credibility and to provide context. You may consider that testimony for those purposes only. And think about yourself as a juror. You're thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? Limiting instructions, David Pecker, I can only consider his testimony for what stuff? For his credibility? This is complicated legal stuff. Think about, you're just a jury. I was listening to Pecker. What do you mean credibility? Is he credible or not? Like, was he telling the truth? So can I listen to what he said there and apply that to Trump? Yes or no? Neither the non-prosecution agreement nor the conciliation agreement, and these people don't know what this stuff is. A what? An NPA? A conciliation agreement with the FEC? What the hell are they talking about? You may not consider them in determining whether Trump is guilty or not guilty. Okay. They say from Michael Cohen. You also heard testimony that the FEC investigated Michael Cohen and the Stormy Daniels payment. That evidence was permitted to assist you, the jury, in assessing Cohen's credibility. You may consider that for that purpose only. And likewise, you're going to recall that Cohen also pleaded guilty to violating the FECA. And I remind you that that was, again, for his credibility and to provide context for the events that followed. You may consider that testimony for those purposes only. So neither the fact of the investigation or the fact that Cohen pleaded guilty constitutes evidence of Trump's guilt, and you may not consider them for determining that Trump is guilty or not guilty. And that type of stuff actually helps Trump. And I think they're putting that in there to make sure that, that has to be in there, because otherwise it's guilt by association, and they need more than that. So there is a limiting instruction on that, but it's also Michael Cohen is the person who is brought in to implicate Trump. So they're essentially saying Trump is guilty by proxy, but you can't say that he's guilty by proxy. So they're putting that in the jury instructions. But that's the argument. I mean, that's why they brought Michael Cohen here. He's an accomplice. He did all of the things, and Trump is guilty by association. And Cohen's a liar, so they need external evidence to corroborate what he's saying here. Now, you will recall that certain Wall Street news articles were accepted. I remind you the articles were accepted only for a limited purpose for context. Other hearsay may have come in. For example, there was the National Enquirer headlines. But we were just demonstrating how that was being published and being documented. There were also some other text messages. With respect to Gina Rodriguez's text and 257. So again, this is how insane this is. So the jurors are they writing all of this down right now? Judge says there were some text messages that were accepted. So People's Exhibit 171A with Gina Rodriguez's text. The jurors like, what? 171A. Okay, writing that down with Gina Rodriguez. And 257 with respect to Chris Cuomo. They go 257, Chris Cuomo. Those text messages were accepted for the limited purpose of providing context for Dylan Howard and Michael Cohen. Jury goes, what the hell's going on right now? What? Supposed to remember this? Then he says, the exhibits which were accepted into evidence with a limited instruction are these: 152, 153A, 153B, 153C, 161, 171A, 180, 181, and 257. Jurors are going, mine's just, what? And they're not going to get a copy of this, so they have to write all this down. Limiting instruction for these texts, it's total bedlam. It's madness. If you have any additional questions or need clarification, I'm clear. Just ask me. I'll be happy to clarify. Okay. Well, give them a copy of the document so that they can just follow what you wrote there. So we now turn to fundamental principles of law that I have wrecked here over the last 6 weeks that apply in all criminal cases, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is presumed to be innocent, unless your name is Trump. In determining whether the people have satisfied their burden, it's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the burden is on the people. Now, Trump did not testify. You can't hold that against him. And the burden of proof is on the government. Trump is not required to prove he's not guilty. In fact, the people have the burden of proving this beyond a reasonable doubt. And they have to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for every element of the crime. Now, as we'll talk about, they're manipulating the elements of the crime. They're saying, they do have to be unanimous on every element of the crime, but just not the sub-elements of the crime. which we'll explain here in a minute about why they're rigging this. Now, what is reasonable doubt, they say? And a lot of this is just standard jury instructions in criminal cases, nothing special for Trump they're putting in here. He said, well, what's the term proof beyond a reasonable doubt? It says, in dealing with human affairs, we rarely have absolute certainty, and so it doesn't require absolute certainty. It just means beyond a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt is an honest doubt of guilt. It is an actual doubt, not imaginary. It's a doubt that a reasonable person acting in a matter of this importance would be likely to entertain because of a lack of evidence. It's proof that leaves you so firmly convinced, if it's beyond a reasonable doubt, you are so firmly convinced that you have no reasonable doubt of the existence of any element of the crime that you have doubts about. So we used to say, or a lot of criminal defense attorneys say, any doubt based in reason. If you have any doubt about anything that happened here, it's a key element of this crime, it's based in reason, that's enough. Very, very low standard to meet the doubt standard. In determining whether the people have proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, you should be guided solely on the evidence. Don't base it on speculation. And if you're not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, you must find him not guilty. Now let's talk about the credibility of the witnesses, says the judge. As judges of the facts, ladies and gentlemen, you alone determine the truthfulness and the accuracy of the testimony of each witness. You must decide whether they told the truth, whether they testified with falsities or they were mistaken. And here, this is where they might be playing Where's Waldo like snipers. Bingo, right? One juror might say, if you find that any witness has intentionally falsified and testified falsely as to any material fact, you may disregard that witness's entire testimony. What about Michael Cohen? So one juror just, yeah, I thought he said that. Oh, it's called falsus in uno. Oh, I heard him say that. Or you may disregard as much of it as you want, or accept so much of it as you find to have been truthful and accurate. Also, credibility factors. There's no particular formula for evaluating the truthfulness or the accuracy of a person's statement. You do this with your life experiences. You frequently decide truthfulness in your life, and so do that here. How might you do that? Well, ask yourself these questions, ladies and gentlemen. Some of the factors you may wish to ask yourself, did they actually see or hear the events physically? Did the witness recall those events accurately? Was the testimony plausible or was it implausible? Would you consider this witness to be consistent or inconsistent? Do you think that they were truthful? Did their background, their training, their education impact this? Or what about their conscious bias or their hostility? Could that impact their truthfulness? Did the witness show that they had an unconscious bias that might have impacted them? You can think about their motive. Did they have a motive to lie? And if they did the motive impact their truthfulness? That may impact your consideration of their credibility. You may also consider whether the witness hopes or expects to receive a benefit from their testimony and whether that impacts their truthfulness. Do they have an interest in the outcome of the case? You're not required to reject the testimony of someone who does, but you could think about how it impacts their truthfulness. Well, what if they have previous criminal conduct? You may also consider whether a witness has been convicted of a crime and how that impacts their truthfulness. Now, you're not required to reject them just because they've been convicted, but you can consider it. You may also consider their inconsistent statements. Some people might say lies. You may also consider whether they made statements that were inconsistent with their testimony, or whether they testified to a fact that was omitted, that a reasonable witness should have stated. If a witness has made inconsistent statements, you may consider that. And if they have been consistent, you can consider that as well. You also heard testimony, ladies and gentlemen, about the prosecution and defense counsel. They told us that they were preparing witnesses. The law permits that to happen. You've also heard testimony that a witness read or reviewed certain materials, and they're allowed to do that too. Speaking to a witness about his or her testimony is not improper as long as it is not suggested that the witness deviate from the truth. The people also have the burden of showing that Trump is the person who committed the crime, which is why we had a lot of testimony in the trial. Do you know who Trump is? Yeah, he's seated over there. let the record reflect Trump's been identified. Got it. Thus, even if you are convinced that someone committed the crime, we got to be sure it's the defendant. Judge continues, telling us that under our law, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Cohen is an accomplice because there is evidence that he participated in a crime based on conduct involved in the allegations here against the defendant. So jury's already thinking, well, wait a minute. If Cohen got convicted of something, shouldn't Trump? Our law is especially concerned about the testimony of an accomplice who implicates another in the commission of a crime. So if someone gets convicted, it's not me, they did it. Therefore, our law provides that a defendant may not be convicted from accomplice testimony unless it's got some independent corroborative evidence. In other words, even if you think Michael Cohen is believable, you may not convict Trump solely on Cohen's testimony, unless you also find that it was corroborated by other evidence tending to connect Trump with the commission of the crime. But the evidence itself here need not prove that a crime was committed or that the defendant is guilty. So you don't need like a whole nother crime. What the law requires is that there be evidence that tends to connect the defendant, with the commission of the crime charge in a way that may reasonably satisfy you that the accomplice is telling the truth. And in determining whether there is necessary corroboration, you may consider whether there is material, believable evidence apart from the testimony of Cohen that you may consider. You may also consider whether there is material and believable evidence aside from Michael Cohen, which, while it does not itself tend to connect Trump to the crime, it nonetheless harmonizes the narrative. It harmonizes the narrative. Isn't that beautiful? And tends to connect Trump to the crime. So whatever the jury, it feels right. It feels right. It feels like it resonates. I feel like we're in harmony with these charges. I will now instruct you on the charged crime, says the judge. Our law recognizes that two or more individuals can act jointly in a crime, and in certain circumstances, each of them can be held liable. Our law defines these circumstances. When one person engages in conduct which constitutes another offense, another is liable for the conduct when they act with the state of mind required for the commission of the offense, and then they engage in the conduct. So they give us some elements here. In order for Trump to be criminally liable, you must find beyond a reasonable doubt that one, Trump solicited, requested, commanded, or intentionally aided that person to engage in the conduct. So Trump did something causing Cohen to, it's the first domino. Something happened, and then the rest of the dominoes started to fall. That he did so with the state of mind, the mens rea, the mental state required for the commission of the offense. Now, if it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump is liable for the conduct of another, how far he was involved doesn't matter. A defendant proven is as guilty of the crime as if the defendant personally had done the crime. So the people have showing this burden beyond a reasonable doubt. And on each count, whether guilty or guilty, you must be unanimous on each count, but not for the elements of the offense, as we'll see. In order to find Trump guilty, however, you need not be unanimous on whether the defendant Trump committed the crime personally or by acting in concert with one another or both. So they have, again, choose your own adventure criminal charge. So, well, it's kind of the means that they acted together, whether he did it on his own, in concert, or with another, whatever you want. So just kind of pick it. So it's unanimous on the counts, but how you think those counts got created, choose your own adventure. Pick a crime, any crime, whatever works. So I will now instruct you on the applicable charges. It says, under our law, a person is guilty of falsifying business records in the first degree. This is the big one, 34 counts of these, when with intent to defraud that includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal the commission thereof, that person makes or causes a false entry in the business records of an enterprise. So we've got a couple elements that we can tease out of here. A person needs to do this. So it's a person is doing something. So we've got that. There's some causation. There's a make or a cause. So something happens. It's a false entry. How do you define that? It's in the business records and it's of an enterprise. So these are various definitions all tucked in there. So we got to define all of this stuff. Now, here are the following terms. Enterprise means a corporate entity. So they'll say, okay, so Trump, yeah, an enterprise, Trump org. Business records means any writing, article, computer program. In this case, it was the Trump version of QuickBooks, whatever that is. So they'll say, okay, so that element gets checked. Got two. Intent. They'll say, oh, okay, intent means conscious objective or purpose. Thus, a person acts with the intent to defraud when his conscious objective or purpose is to defraud. Intent does not require premeditation. In other words, intent does not require advanced planning. It's not necessary that the person's intent be in the person's mind for a long period of time or a short period of time. The intent can be formed and need only exist at the very moment that they engage in that conduct, at that very moment and not at any time earlier. And so the question arises, how do we determine the intent? So to make a determination in this case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you must decide if the required intent can be inferred. What were they thinking in their brain beyond a reasonable doubt from the proven facts? How do you do that? Well, what did they do or say? What was their conduct? What was the natural, necessary, and probable consequence of that conduct? And from there, you can determine whether they had the necessary intent, the mens rea, the guilty mind. As I previously explained, says the judge, a person acts with intent to defraud when their conscious objective or purpose is to defraud. In order to prove an intent to defraud, the government need not prove that Trump acted with the intent to defraud any person or entity. So just a general, vague defraud mindset, not fraud related to a person or entity. A general intent to defraud any person or entity suffices. I guess it could be including the American people. So a general intent, it doesn't have to be Rob tries to defraud Viva. It could be Rob tries to defraud somebody. Intent to defraud is also not constricted to an intent to deprive another of property or money and can extend beyond economic concerns like, the election. So here is where it gets a little bit more interesting. For the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree, the intent to defraud must also include an intent to commit another crime. This is what elevates it, aggravates it from a misdemeanor into a felony, which allows them to beat the statute of limitations to bring this case in the first place. Under our law, although the people must prove an intent to commit another crime or to aid or to conceal the commission thereof, they need not prove that the other crime was in fact committed, aided, or concealed. So Trump intended to do something else bad, but doesn't have to even do anything in furtherance or actually commit that other crime. So here's the predicate. What is that other crime? This has been the big question for a long time. They give us New York election law. The people allege that the other crime that Trump intended to commit finally is to conceal as a violation of New York election law. Here's what this law says. Section 17152 provides that any two or more persons who conspire to promote or to prevent an election of any person to public office by unlawful means and which conspiracy is acted upon by one or more parties shall be guilty of conspiracy to promote or to prevent an election, which, by the way, is a misdemeanor. Under our law, a person is guilty of a conspiracy when with the intent to, and Trump was not charged with a conspiracy, and Trump was not charged with this law, right? This is a New York state case, by the way, as we know. It's in New York. Why didn't they charge him with this crime? Well, because the statute of limitations expired. It's a misdemeanor. So they're going to allege that this misdemeanor that they can't charge now is enough to be the predicate object offense that then escalates the original misdemeanor into a felony now? It's Looney Tunes. Now, they would be guilty of conspiracy with intent that conduct would be performed to prevent the election. Knowledge of a conspiracy does not make you a co-conspirator. You must intend that the conduct would be performed to prevent or to promote the election through unlawful means of a person. Again, conscious objective. And evidence that Trump was present with others is not alone enough to be a conspiracy. So what does this mean? So we're like multiple layers deep. We're in Inception land. And I've got a diagram to explain this in a minute. But here's what they say. Although you must conclude unanimously that Trump conspired to promote or to prevent the election of any person by unlawful means, you need not be unanimous as to what those unlawful means were. So it's a choose your crime, any crime. Pick a crime, any crime, doesn't matter. In determining whether Trump conspired to promote or to prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means, you may consider the following. Violations of the FECA, which the federal government declined, and they don't have jurisdiction over because this is a state case. Falsification of other business records, or 3, violation of tax laws. And so other business records, again, not charged here, but they referenced in their other jury instructions, they were making the argument that this was the 1099. They were saying that these were the LLC formations, that Michael Cohen was created. So he falsified LLCs for false business purposes. They fraudulently filed tax forms. So they're saying, oh, that's enough. And they had a whole smorgasbord of other items. So they'll just say that that's enough. Or violation of tax laws. Now, the first of the people's theories, so the judge is giving them a coloring book, paint by numbers. Just put your yellows in square 1. Put your browns over here in box 2. Under the Federal Election Campaign Act, it's unlawful for any individual to willfully make a contribution to any candidate, and you can't exceed $2,700. So the jurors will think, oh, Michael Cohen gave Trump a benefit of $130,000. That's more than $2,700. They just hear the numbers. Judge would not allow the expert to come in and even testify about this, about the FECA. It's also unlawful under the FECA for a corporation to willfully make a contribution. And for the purposes of these prohibitions, an expenditure made in cooperation, it's like written to incriminate Trump. Because no one knows what the hell this means on the jury. We didn't have an expert witness come in and talk about this. He has not been charged with this crime. But the jury can just choose their own adventure. They just pick it. That sounds right. The term contribution and expenditure, which Trump has never been charged with, are now for your decision. Under federal law, a third-party payment, so Cohen's payment of a candidate's expenses, is a contribution. If the payment would have been made even in the absence of the candidacy, then it should not be treated as a contribution. And these contributions would cover a magazine. Do not include any cost incurred in covering or carrying a news story, commentary, or editorial, so long as the activity is a normal, legitimate press function. So the FEC may not even apply. This is called the press exemption. For example, the term legitimate press function includes solicitation letters as seeking new subscribers to a publication. So again, the jury is going to have to go through all of this and write this down. Okay, wait, I thought you just said up in these paragraphs that the FEC applies. You can't give somebody more than $2,700. It sounds like somebody did that. But I guess you can. So I guess you can buy stories under the FEC if there is a legitimate press function. What on earth? Jury is totally lost. Now, falsification, even the lawyers, falsification, because this case is not actually built on logical legal principles. Now, the second of the people's theories of unlawful means, which I will define for you now, is the falsification of other business records. You can do a business falsification crime in the second degree when you make false entries. And I previously defined the terms for you. So again, check this out. And I didn't know this was going to be in these instructions. We speculated that they were based on the joint approvals that came across from both sides, but watch this. This is how rigged this is. And this is why the fact that they didn't come out and just find Trump guilty overnight, immediately, in minutes, shows how weak their case is, because the judge has given them literally paint by numbers. You get a bookshelf from IKEA that's more complicated than those instructions. I've had Lego sets that were harder to build in this case. They just put it right here. The judge says here, okay, well, for the purposes of determining whether the falsifying business records in the second degree was an unlawful means used by a conspiracy to promote or to prevent an election here, you may consider any of these items, whatever you want, just pick one. Here's how easy he's making it for them. It's like a buffet. You can choose the bank records associated with Michael Cohen's account formation paperwork for Resolution Consultants and Essential Consultants, LLC. You heard from the bank guy. He said that he created those bank accounts for the wrong purposes. So just pick those and just think that Cohen did that for Trump. You can also use the bank records associated with Michael Cohen's wire to Keith Davidson. Okay, Trump's not involved in any of that. Trump didn't wire anything to Keith Davidson. Trump didn't form and fill out the LLCs and go in there and create fraudulent LLCs, or there's no evidence he instructed him to do any of that. The invoice from Investor Advisory Services to Resolution Consultants, number 3. So again, 3, whatever, just pick one. And 4, jurors, you can also decide that the 1099 miscellaneous form is also that they issued to Michael Cohen, the contractor form, is also fraudulent. So whatever you want, you can pick any 3. It doesn't matter. Or here's another one. Any of those 4 plus the FECA plus this one, they've got 5 options. He says the people's third theory of unlawful means, whatever you want, just pick one, which I will define for you now, is violation of tax laws. So Trump is defending against 3 separate subcrimes that were never charged. And of the one subcrime, which is falsifying business records, there are 4 subcrimes that they can pick from. Interesting times, isn't it? It's not even a real, well, I guess this is the new real America, but it's not how law is supposed to work. Under New York State and New York law, it's unlawful to supply false or fraudulent information with tax returns. It's also likewise unlawful for a person to willfully make any tax return statement or provide any other document that they think is not true. Now let's just pause here, and I want to diagram what we just saw. So those were the jury instructions, and we roughly went through some of the elements of the offense. And let's go down multiple layers in our inception chart. Obviously, we talked about a person. There needs to be some causation. Somebody did something. There was a false business record. Still don't really know what that is. They said it was not a legal expense. It was not a legal retainer. They say it was sort of a campaign expense, but they didn't say that it should have been labeled as a campaign expense. There's also some rumors that it was a 2016 activity, legal action that was paid for in 2017. They wrote the invoices for 2017, for 2018. But I think the idea is that it was just a campaign expense, but they didn't really explain to us what this should have been written as. I don't think it matters. They would have charged them anyways. An enterprise, which is Trump Organization. Now, then we get the intent to defraud. So this, at this level, this makes this just a misdemeanor offense. It's intent to defraud. It's a misdemeanor. So they needed to aggravate this. How did they do that? They said there is an intent to commit or to conceal, to cover up another crime. And when you add that in there, intent to defraud, but an intent to also defraud and conceal another crime, that turns it into a felony. That's why we're here. That extended the statute of limitations. This whole case wouldn't have been brought if they couldn't have found this justification for aggravating the crime. Now, when we zoom out on all of this, this is literally what we just read. So in order for this to be aggravated, they have 3 options. 1, the FECA. Problem with this case, of course, is that the feds already declined this. They looked into it. It wasn't a crime. Michael Cohen took a guilty plea. He pleaded guilty to some conduct that is overlapping with this case, according to them. But Bragg has no jurisdiction over federal election crimes or anything in this wheelhouse at all. So they are leaving that as one option. New York unlawful means election rules. There's other options there. And then there are the tax crimes. So they could go to any one of these. They could say, okay, that one satisfies the checkboxes. They go this way, boom, boom, boom. That satisfies this prong. They go this way, they could go this way, and they could go this way. And just check any of these boxes to satisfy that final element and then come to the conclusion that Trump is guilty. If they want to go down this middle route, they could also go this way. So they could basically put the FECA over here and just say, well, under a New York election unlawful means, that's also FECA or a New York tax violation. But then they also have these 4 other options. Cohen's paperwork was bad. Invoice from advisory services, the wire transfer, the 1099 form, all of this stuff. So they have multiple options. All they have to do is just connect these dots on any one of these. The judge has laid out a criminal buffet for them. And the jury still has questions. They're still asking about this. So that is where we're at. Now, they give us some case and count specific charges. And so let's see what is here. They say, in order for you to find Trump guilty of a crime, under count 1, here's what you have to prove. And of course, we know what those are. On February 14th, in the county of New York, Trump personally, acting in concert with other people, created or caused a false entry in the business records of an enterprise. Specifically, an invoice came from Cohen. They marked it as a record. It was maintained by Trump, and then they cut a check. And they did so to cover up or to conceal the creation of another crime. And if you find that they've proven this beyond a reasonable doubt, and any one of those crimes that we just talked about would suffice, or it's not even crimes, the LLC documents, you must find him guilty of this crime. And you now have heard me define the count for count 1. There are 33 remaining counts. Each one is the same. The only difference is that each count pertains to a different business records. So I'm only going to repeat this once. I'm not going to read it 34 times. Of course, you can ask me to repeat it, but here is where he goes through all the counts, 13th count, 15th count. We know what the dates are. We know what the times are. It's the same thing times 34. So he gets all the way through those, 32nd, the 34th count. And then he gives us the falsification of business records statute. As I previously explained, we've already talked about the intent to defraud. In order to prove an intent to defraud, the people don't need to prove that he tried to defraud anything specific. Just general is enough. We also know that they don't need to prove that another crime was in fact committed or concealed at all. Evidence that the defendant was present might be enough. And looks like we have some repeat language here. It says, for the purposes of determining this, this looks like it's all a repeat. So I think we've got this, most of that. They copied and pasted some stuff. Now, let's fast forward. We're here to deliberations. So, ladies and gentlemen, your verdict on each count you consider, whether guilty or not guilty, must be unanimous. That is, each and every juror must agree to it. So on every count 1 through 34, they got to agree. To reach a unanimous verdict, you must deliberate with other jurors. That means discuss the evidence. Each of you must decide the case for yourself. Do not surrender an honest view. Don't hesitate to re-examine your views. Now, some jurors took notes. Any notes not taken are only an aid to your memory. Those jurors who chose not to take notes must rely on their own memories. These are for your personal use, only for recollection, and they are not a substitute for evidence that was presented here. If there's a discrepancy between what you say and what I say, I'll be happy to clarify. You may see that any or all exhibits were received in evidence. If you want to see materials, please let me know which. And if you have a question, write me a note. Under our law, the first person that is selected to be the juror is the foreperson. They may chair the discussions. And when the jury has reached a verdict, guilty or not guilty, the entire jury will be asked to come out. The foreperson will be asked whether the jury has reached a verdict. If the foreperson says yes, the foreperson will be asked then what the verdict is for each count. Finally, upon the request of the party, when they announce the verdict, we can ask whether their answers are yes or no. Is this your true verdict? Now, I will give you a form known as a verdict sheet. The verdict sheet lists each count submitted for your consideration and the possible verdicts. Please use the form to record your verdict by marking an X in the appropriate place. You also notice I have indicated whether a count pertains to an invoice, a voucher, or a check. I've added the dates and the voucher number, so 34 counts with each one. Sole reason is to help you distinguish between the various counts. Now, here are the rules. While you're in the courthouse deliberating on this case, you're going to be kept in the jury room. You may not leave except at all. Lunch will be provided. If you have a cell phone, please give it to the court. You must deliberate about the case only when you're all gathered there. Don't discuss it when you're coming to and from the courtroom. If not all 12 of you are there, stop deliberating. During your deliberations, you must only discuss the case, no one else. If you have a question, let me know. We will work every day until 4:30. However, we can work later if the jury wishes to do so. Depending on the time you select, we may order dinner. I should explain that under our law, I'm not permitted to have conversations with you about the facts. Thus, every note you send me, do not tell me what the vote of the jury is on any count. If a juror wants to speak to me during deliberations, a meeting here in the courtroom with all parties will be arranged. No jurors, however, can tell me what is being said about the facts or the verdict or whatever the vote is. And while I will, of course, listen to whatever a juror has to say, I may not be able to respond to that juror if the response involves instructions in the law. The reason for that is we want to make sure nothing goes astray. Now, that concludes my instructions in the law, ladies and gentlemen. And we pick back up with Inner City Press reporting. He says to the alternates, that concludes my instructions. Now, the plan is to work till 4:30 today. We're concluded. Attorneys, please approach. So they go up to the bench for a sidebar. Judge Mercan says, okay, just don't put your name on the notes, just the number. Wait, I have one more question for counsel. Come back up. They come back up for another sidebar. Mercan says, all right, jurors, there is a laptop with the evidence on it. Jurors number 4 and number 6, the tech bros, you will be shown how to operate it. So jurors, you can now step out with the 6 alternates stepping to the side. Mercan says to the alternates, every one of you was very engaged. We're grateful for your service. Alternate number 3, I saw you writing away. You went through 3 notebooks, I think. Now, we're not releasing you yet, alternates. You may still be needed yet. So hand in your cell phones and follow the court officers. Let's bring in jurors number 4 and 6 who volunteered for the laptop. Let's show them how to operate it. Mr. Blanche, has your client consented to sending the laptop back so they can see the evidence? He says, yes, Your Honor. The president has. The judge says, very good. Well, do not leave the courthouse. You must stay here. Do not leave. You need to get here quickly if we receive a note. And they break. But we're back. There's a jury note. Judge Mercan's back on the record. Good afternoon. We received a jury note. It's signed by the foreperson at 256. It says, we request David Pecker's testimony about phone conversations with the defendant, about the decision not to finalize Karen McDougal's life rights, about Mr. Pecker's testimony about the Trump Tower meeting, and about Michael Cohen's testimony about that meeting too. They said, okay. Any objections to providing them with that testimony? No? Okay, fine. Guess we'll get it. We have another note. 3:51 p.m. They come back out and they say, we would like you to reread the jury instructions for us. Judge says, well, I suggest that we just bring them out, tell them we're working on the testimony that they requested earlier, ask for clarification about their instruction requests. Say, what kind of instructions do you want? And by the way, does the laptop have any Wi-Fi on it? Then when we let the jurors go tonight, let's get our hands on the laptop. Let's disable the Wi-Fi. All right, let's turn off those drivers, shut that thing off. How many pages are we looking at for the readbacks? 30 or so. Trump's at the defendant table. He's speaking with both Todd Blanche and Emile Beauvais. They're whispering. All of a sudden, jury comes back in. All rise. The judge says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, the first note requests David Pecker's testimony on the phone conversation with Trump in New Jersey meeting and not to fund McDougal's life rights. It also says Pecker about the Trump Tower meeting. We're looking for Michael Cohen about the Trump Tower meeting. And the judge says, well, so to tell me how much of my instructions you want read back, you could go back into the jury room and send out a note. You would not have to be brought back in before you leave for the night. So tell me, I need to know what you want me to read, the whole thing or not. So go talk about it and let me know. Don't talk to anyone about the case. Don't post about it. And tomorrow, if you want to decide on this, you could decide to work late, but we're not going to go beyond 6 p.m. So you guys decide what you want to do in there. Good night. Jurors now leave. Don't talk about the case. Now, on the first note, the judge says, do not leave the courtroom until you have agreed on the readback. And thank you. And court is adjourned. So we now have jurors who have no copies of the jury instructions, who have multiple options. They can just pick and choose basically whatever they want to try to convict Donald Trump. The jury has a smorgasbord buffet of options. The government laid it out for them. The judge allowed it to be laid out for them. And they still have questions. They walked right in, took one look at what Michael Cohen was cooking and said, I'd rather starve to death. Thanks, though. So we have reaction from this. Here is what Fox News was reporting. Also a little bit shocked that they can pick a crime, any crime. They don't have to be unanimous on how the crime got there. This was Fox and Andy McCarthy talking about this.
To agree on what has occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the three choices. Thus, this means that they could split 4-4-4 and the judge would still treat them unanimously. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, it's really outrageous because in a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery case, it's, you have to rob. It's got to be a financial institution. You have to show intent. Those are the things the jury has to agree on unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less, but it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019. So the only reason they're still able to bring this case is because it's a felony, allegedly, and yet now the judge is saying, you don't have to agree on what the felony is.
Yeah, and it's not even a felony. It's just an object offense that escalates it into a felony. So these are not felonies, right? They can say, well, maybe it was a federal felony, but the feds that have jurisdiction didn't bring the felony. So they can escalate something for something that another government has already reviewed and declined. They can just decide we're going to charge that, even though we don't have jurisdiction over that crime. So you can kind of bring cases based on things you don't have jurisdiction over. That is not how this works. We also have a problem because this is a misdemeanor. Doesn't matter what happened here, whether Cohen did any of those things. If they said that Cohen was guilty or that Trump was guilty of doing that, it would also be a misdemeanor. And they already ran out of time to do that. So now another misdemeanor that has already expired, they're going to use that as an aggravator to reignite a felony case. It's lunacy. Same thing with the New York tax charge. Another misdemeanor. 5th degree tax crime would have been a misdemeanor, 1802. And now it's a felony, even though there's no jurisdiction and the other predicate crimes are misdemeanors. It's illogical, and it's something that is probably going to be turned over on appeal, but they don't care about that. They have one end in mind, which is to get their way. They're so excited about this. Andrew Weissmann, I know you're going to be shocked about this, but he admits that he's got a man crush on Judge Juan Merchan. It was shocking. I was really surprised. Wow, Weissmann? has a man crush? Get out of here.
As you've noted, with respect to Judge Marchand, I mean, I am like now, I have like a man crush on him. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get.
All right, I'm going to vomit my guts out. Who knows what he, all right, we'll just leave that there. Has a lot of thoughts about Judge Marchand. We don't want to know what they are. So to clear out that terrible visual, let's think about and talk and hear from Alina, Habba, in the house, because she showed up. She was hanging out, responding to the day's affairs. She posted on X, says, prosecution took 5 hours with no crime name to even come through this thing. No evidence was given. It's all noise and shiny balls. They've got no facts.
Trump legal spokesperson Alina Habba joins me now. Alina, so you were there. Closing arguments. Todd Blanche, Trump's defense counsel, went first. And then I guess the prosecution, did 5 hours?
Right. That's what you have to do when you haven't proven your case in trial. You plan that you have this great big break, and then you come up and you say, oh, guess what? I get to go do an argument. And in my entire argument, guess what, everybody? They don't get to rebut anything I say. So they took 4 hours to tell their story. I actually had to leave. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was insane.
Probably need a bathroom break. That's a very, very long closer.
Yeah, but
what was the point? Did they have a crime at the end of this?
No.
No, still they haven't named the crime.
They could not give us any evidence. It was a lot of noise, and that's what we...
It's one of multiple. We have 3 options. It's one of 3 crimes. Trump had no notice or due process or opportunity to even prepare for a defense for these crimes. So it's one of 3, but close enough.
Keep seeing, Jesse. There was not one bit of evidence that showed that Donald Trump had an intent to commit any crime. And I'm still, as I sit here as an attorney, trying to understand how they could have possibly brought this at this point, wasted this much taxpayer dollars, past the statute of limitations, and then had the audacity to make a jury sit there until 8 o'clock with a bunch of nonsense and shiny balls, as she just said,
right.
Because that's all they've got. They've got no facts.
So we're hearing from inside the court.
It's unbelievable. I mean, you've seen it, and the way that the visceral reaction that this judge had when we had our one witness come up and he threw the press out, that kind of anger, that kind of TDS. Frankly, we saw it with De Niro today. But that is what we're challenged with. We're dealing with people that are either going to believe a story. It was like sitting in make-believe land with the prosecution today, or you're going to listen to the facts. And the facts took us an hour and a half to break down. There were none. And you've got a person that is a complete liar that you're relying on. It was pretty simple for us. It took them a very long time to try and bob, weave, and make up stories.
All right, Alina, Habba in the house. They've got no facts. And the jury, I think, is having a hard time with this, too. They're also wanting to learn more. They are thinking about it. They've got questions, and that's good news. Last thing we wanted was a quick and dirty guilty verdict, but they're digging into it. And as we continue to cover this, we hope you join us as we do. If you like this video, the next video in our next segment is about Judge Juan Merchan absolutely getting blasted by Congress. We'll see you over there on that one. All right, my friends, now let's jump into it because Congress is not happy. Judge Juan Merchan getting some congressional fire from Representative Elise Stefanik and Senator J.D. Vance. Why? Because he is randomly appointed to all the Trump cases. Isn't that convenient? The same Democrat donating judge who donated to Joe Biden, whose daughter has made $93 million and then some, working for Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris specifically, he keeps getting assigned to the Trump cases and he keeps getting his way, prosecuting everybody. And guess who's coming up next in his courtroom after the Trump trial is over? Steve Bannon. Isn't that fun? And what happens if there's a hung jury? Do you think he's going to have a trial again in his courtroom? Try to squeeze another one in before the election? We'll see. But he is catching it, man. We got 2 letters here. One from Elise Stefanik, one from J.D. Vance. Even Marco Rubio's getting in on it. And NBC is saying, yeah, the defense has done a pretty good job here in spite of this rigged courtroom. So what is happening out there? We've got Elise Stefanik, you know who she is, on the short list for the vice presidential slot. She sent this one into the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct, saying, all right, you got a bad judge out there. We need to talk about it. Also, Inspector General for New York State Unified Court System also got this letter from Elise Stefanik as a civilian citizen. She sent this, says, all right, I'm writing to alert you people, in case you didn't know, to potential misconduct by justices and employees of the Supreme Court here. Now, the potential misconduct pertains to the repeated assignment of Judge Merchan, a Democrat donor to criminal cases related to Trump and his allies. Also, acting justice, who's been acting for a long time, currently presides over the criminal case against Trump brought by Alvin Bragg. Merchan also presided over the criminal trial against the Trump Organization, and he's going to be presiding over Steve Bannon coming up soon, a senior advisor in Trump's White House. Now, the website for the Supreme Court, the criminal term, New York County, it does not provide a comprehensive list of every justice and acting justice sitting in the courthouse, but based on the courtroom directory, there are at least 24 sitting justices on the court. Acting Justice Merchan is not even listed among them. One assumes because he's an acting judge who keeps getting these nationally important cases. But Elise says, all right, here, section 200.11c of the Uniform Rules of the Court, it requires that criminal actions be assigned to a judge pursuant to a method of random selection that's authorized by the chief administrator. If justices were indeed being randomly assigned in the criminal term, the probability of two specific criminal cases being assigned to the same justice is quite low. And the probability of 3 specific criminal cases being assigned to the same judge is infinitesimally small. And yet somehow, Merchan got all 3 cases. Now, this is the same acting judge who, in violation of New York State law for judges, donated to Joe Biden's campaign, along with the Progressive Turnout Project. He donated to, quote, stop Republicans. Now he's the judge who can do that via his gavel. It's also the same acting judge whose daughter is a political consultant working for prominent Democrats, whose firm stands to profit greatly if Trump is convicted. Now, Ms. Stefanik says, one cannot help but suspect that the, quote, random selection at work in this assignment of a Democratic Party donor to these cases is not in fact random at all. Simple answer to why Merchan has been assigned to these cases would seem to be that whoever made the assignment intentionally selected him to handle these cases to increase the chance that Trump, the Trump Organization, and Steve Bannon would ultimately be convicted. So she requests that the commission and the inspector general investigate this little anomaly to determine whether the required random selection process was in fact followed here. If Merchan or any other justices are found to have violated these rules, well, I would hope the commission would subject them to the required discipline. And if any non-judicial employees of the court are involved in such a scheme, I would hope the inspector general would subject them to the appropriate sanctions. Thank you for this attention to this matter. Sincerely, your friend, Elise Stefanik. Of course, footnoted and cited. So 2 entities in New York now getting formal complaints about Judge Merchan, and the Senate is also sending letters as well. This one comes from J.D. Vance from Ohio, sent May 29th from Senate letterhead. This one goes to the Honorable Merrick Garland. He says, Dear Attorney General Garland, I write to bring to your attention a possible crime called criminal deprivation of rights. We now know that public evidence suggests that at least an investigation is warranted. And all indications are that the responsible parties have their sights set not only on rights protected by the Constitution, but on the right holders of core federal concerns, including the leading candidate for presidency. Now, Mr. Garland, you should be well acquainted with the relevant statutes we're about to talk about. Prosecutors in your Department of Justice included Section 241 in a misguided indictment of Trump last year. That criminalizes conspiracies to injure or intimidate others from enjoying their federal rights. And we know that that statute was enacted during the Reconstruction effort to stamp out race-based violence in the former Confederacy. When your prosecutors revived this statute, Even sympathetic media were surprised by your inclusion of that statute in the indictment. That is because few jurists had any clue that a Reconstruction-era law designed to protect newly freed slaves had any bearing on a dispute between Republicans and Democrats after 2020. Nevertheless, the DOJ prosecutors defied the critics. They argued then, as they argue now, that Trump engaged in a conspiracy to, quote, threaten voters. Though the details of the threat have not been forthcoming. How did he do that? Section 242 may not have featured notoriously in the indictment of Trump, but it is just as well known to the prosecutors that you oversee, Merrick. The statute even has its own write-up on your website. The DOJ says it makes it a crime for a person acting under color of law to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution. Yes, that includes state officials acting within their authority as well. Now, these statutes would seem to have quite a lot to say about the conduct of Judge Juan Merchan, the New York trial judge and Democrat political donor who set up a kangaroo court for Donald Trump in Manhattan. It makes no difference that Merchan is a judge, or a justice, as trial judges are called in New York. Whatever may be the case with respect to civil liability generally, the Supreme Court has never held that the performance of the duties of judicial, legislative, or executive officers requires or contemplates the immunization of otherwise criminal deprivation of constitutional rights. In other words, the judges can't violate your rights either. In fact, Supreme Court precedent declares that judges are proper subjects to prosecution when they do that. And even your website acknowledges that judges who trample over constitutional rights are proper targets. And this is a proper case. Well, J.D. Vance says, Merchan's inquisition of Donald Trump has all the markings of an appropriate case. Says Merchan has imposed a prior restraint on the protected speech of a former president who's now leading the polls. On Merchan's orders himself, a Republican presidential candidate has been made powerless to question the credibility of the witnesses testifying against him, the motivations of the prosecutors pursuing him, or the impartiality of the apparently conflicted judge who's finding him, who gets made donos to Dems. That would be disfavored in the best of circumstances. JD says it was not long ago that even the most liberal justices on the Supreme Court denounced these so-called gag orders. Justice Brennan once said that even a short-lived gag order in a case of widespread concern to the community constitutes a prior restraint, constitutes irreparable injury to the First Amendment. But Merchan doesn't care. He imposed a gag order in the first ever criminal prosecution of a former president and leading presidential candidate. Talk about a case of widespread concern to the community, and you gagged him. Now, Merchan has not been content to deprive Trump of his First Amendment rights either. As a criminal defendant, Trump is entitled to a fair trial by an impartial jury, and Merchan has done his best to deprive him of both. During jury selection, Merchan refused to dismiss jurors with obvious bias. One juror scoffed on social media that Republicans were projected to pick up 70 seats in prison. Another juror posted a video on social media showing her participation in an anti-Trump street demonstration. They're both on there. But Merchan was willing to impanel them anyways, whatever, forcing Trump to burn critical peremptory strikes. Now, when it comes to the admission and the exclusion of evidence, Merchan has just been as just shameless. He has bent over backwards to allow the government to introduce whatever evidence it wants, allowing the government witness to testify about alleged details of some unproven sexual episode that has no relevance to the underlying charges at all. But he's taken a strong hand against the defense at every turn. In one ludicrous example, Merchan ruled that Trump's lawyers could not even mention to the jury that the prosecution of Trump was novel, unusual, or unprecedented. Can't even say that. Even though that by that point, liberal law professors have all conceded that, yeah, there were problems with Bragg's cases. Novel interpretation of state law, many legal problems. So barring exculpatory evidence revealed in a future investigation, Merchan is culpable under Section 242, depriving people of their rights and liberties. There are many co-conspirators to consider along with Merchan. For one, his daughter is an obvious beneficiary, co-conspirator Lauren. She works as a fundraiser for Democrat officials and organizations, and she helps her clients. She helped them raise $93 million. And she invoked this case in her Facebook and newsletter posts. Who else is involved in this conspiracy? Prosecutors in the office of Alvin Bragg, many of them, from Christopher Conroy to Matthew Colangelo to Bragg himself. They're all co-conspirators. After all, they've repeatedly urged Merchan to deprive Trump of his First Amendment rights. One can only wonder what sort of ex parte communications might have led Merchan to so enthusiastically embrace a prior restraint on speech that he should have known would be repugnant to the Constitution. But Merrick, to ensure that you are faithfully and even-handedly applying federal criminal law, please tell me, Merrick, by June 28th, whether you will open a criminal investigation into the conduct of Juan Merchan. J.D. Vance is calling for a criminal investigation into Juan Merchan. If you will not open an investigation, please let me know whether you will consider issuing a document retention request to allow a future administration to take up this case. Answer, he will not. No on both accounts, but a nice letter. J.D. Vance now asking for a criminal investigation into Juan Merchan for violating U.S. Code, criminal deprivation of rights, which is absolutely happening. And we're being deprived of our rights. Not only is Trump being deprived of his right to speak freely and exercise that right under the First Amendment, but as recipients of political speech and participants in the American democracy, we have a right to hear from the leading candidate for the presidency. Marco Rubio also came in on this. The judge in the Trump case, says Marco, in New York City just told the jury that they don't have to unanimously agree on which crime was committed as long as they all at least pick one. And that among the crimes they can pick from are ones that Trump wasn't even charged with. This is exactly the same kind of sham trial used against political opponents in the regime of the old Soviet Union. Marco Rubio also jumping in. Now, NBC agrees the defense has done a good job on this. The jury is deliberating, and the question is, how will they rule? What will the verdict be? Here's from NBC.
I think the defense did a really effective job, essentially saying the idea that these records were falsified is, in their words, just absurd. They said the way that they actually put in the legal retainer language, which is the thing that's actually false, is a drop-down menu in the accounting software, trying to take the sting out of the idea that this was some sort of criminal conspiracy. I think the defense did.
It wasn't at all. It was Trump QuickBooks, TurboTax, just categorized it. I would have liked the TurboTax analogy because then the jurors would say, oh man, I've made different calculations, just little TurboTax drop downs every time they use it. Might be relatable. But Judge Juan Merchan now facing congressional fire. We'll see if Merrick Garland and the others respond, and we'll cover that when they drop. Thanks for joining us as our coverage here continues. And check out this next video coming up. You're going to love it. We'll see you over there. All right, my friends. So that is it for us today. We did cover some good ground, and we've got a jury which is now really thinking about it. Random appointment from Judge Merchan. Everybody doubts that that is honest and actually random. And jurors now demanding some more answers after Judge Merchan hides the jury instructions. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. Let's see what you say about all this. Your amazing super chats. I've seen them coming in. Thank you so much for sending those in. We'll say hello, see what you say about it, and then we'll wrap it up and go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our members only community where we're looking forward to debriefing the day's activities. Let's see who's in the house. What's up? We got some donos here. This one has come in from Larry. What's up, Larry? Says, question, does the appeal process end if the New York governor immediately pardons someone? If so, they can always call Trump a convicted felon who was pardoned for political activity because the appeals court thinks the matter is moot. Yeah, so a lot of great questions here. First of all, the New York governor is Kathy Hochul. I don't think she'll pardon him. So I don't think that will happen. I think if he accepted the pardon, then I would say, yeah, the prosecution would end and the appeal process would end because the case would essentially be over and moot at that point. It would be moot. But I don't think that's going to happen. And yes, I don't think Trump, even if he is convicted here, I don't think he'll be permanently a convicted felon. Even Weinstein's case is coming back down. So Trump's case will definitely get reversed at some point. But they don't care about that. It's only about this game. They don't care about the season. They just care about the game. What's up, Larry? Great to see you. We got Tony Hay Munkets bringing in new membos. Look who's here. Ian Brown's coming in. What's up, Curtis C? Laura's in the house. Kimmy Y Censored is here. And Nunya Bitness is also in the house, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. We got Mima bringing in new membos. Kevin H, Salty Granny's in the house. What's up, Salty? Tracy C, Porsaw J, and Contrarian Barbarian in the house, courtesy of Mima. Thank you, Mima, and welcome aboard, 5 new membos. Shelly is a new supporter on the YouTubes. We'll see you in the morning for our members-only morning stream. We got Debbie E. What's up, Debbie E? 10 membos. Woo! Look who's coming in. Thank you, Debbie. Bringing in I'm the Captain now. Robert L's here. Carrie M. We got Christopher. Kit's here. Thomas Payne, 76 in the house. We also have Annie V, James Turpin, Breer Rabbit, and Angel J brought in as membos, courtesy of Debbie E. Thank you, Debbie. Very generous, and we're grateful for 10 new membos. What's up, John L? Hey, Rob, read the jury instruction again. What? If they are looking at whether on or about 2/14 Trump broke the law, did they just throw out 11 other months, or is it guilty of 34 charges if he's guilty of the 1 month? No, it's going to be for all of them. It'll be for all 2017. So every count is just basically for a different month. I'm sorry. There's like 3 counts. It goes invoice, ledger, check for January. Or I'm sorry, it may have started in February. So February, March, April. There were 2 months that got mashed together. But they're all in there. And you saw that at the very end when I was just showing you the dates. But he's not going to repeat the same thing multiple times. Hey, but thank you, John. Very nice dono. Thanks for being a membo. Joel R, what's up? 9 months as a membo. That's a new baby. Welcome aboard. We got another one. Just using my free shout out. Thanks for everything you do, Rob. Thank you, Joel. Thanks for being a membo for 9 months, for being here and being a part of what we're doing as a membo. We love our membos. What's up, Michael S, new supporter. We'll see you, Michael, on the stream in the morning. What's up, Chubby? Says the hush money case is totes transparent, totes open, totes fair, unless you count the hidden motions via email, the extremely strict rules solely for defense witnesses, the juror instructions, the lying witnesses, the fact that they threw the media out, and many other problems. Yeah, totally transparent, open, and fair. Thank you, Chubby. SK George on Rumble says all it takes is one honey badger of a homegrown New York Patriot juror to sink their teeth in and hang on for dear life. Juror number 2. We're optimistic for juror number 2. Let's get it, juror number 2. Steph D. Just wait. If not guilty, they will cry conspiracy. Membo for 3 months, Steph D. Yeah, if it was an acquittal, they'd say, who did Trump murder out there? Who did he put pressure on? He's like the mobster. They'd probably blame it on what? Putin, you think? Trump Putin, probably. Probably KGB did it. They got to somebody. What's up, Wendy W.? Bringing in 5 new membos. We got nobodies here. David W. Rich is coming in. Janie C. and Bear Arms in the house, courtesy of Wendy W. Thank you, Wendy, and welcome to our 5 new membos. What's up, Salty Sarge? Says maybe the 2 attorneys are having their own trial within the trial in the jury room. I don't know who those 2 people would be. A trial within a trial? 2 attorneys are having their own trial? I don't know what you're talking about there. What's up? Michael Swade says Dershowitz thinks the judge could be holding the alternate jurors in reserve to replace a blocker on a hung jury. That's interesting. So they'd have to find some reason to get rid of them, right? Did he say what he speculates the reason would be to get rid of the holdout juror? What's going on? Fred Pedamonte in the house. Says, Rob, I have not, nor will I ever rise for Mercon. Retread on Local says, Rob, do you think that it's possible that any jurors found Mercan's behavior during the trial, and especially to them, offensive? I think some of his weirdness is aimed at making them feel stupid. Too stupid to get a copy of the jury instructions. Like, I would be irritated by that. But you don't know. Like, the jurors don't know that they're supposed to get a copy. They don't know any better. Also, I think he wants to keep control of them by being able to read their responses while he reads the instruction. I think that's probably true. He's acting like a little puppet master, so why would he let this get out of his control now? He wouldn't. Good comment, Retread. Thanks. Mima says, come on, my friends, please smash that like button. Thank you, Mima, for the reminder. I'm so terrible about reminding to hit that like button, but I really appreciate when you do it. Thank you for doing it. And thanks for the reminder, Mima. Jason L., what's up? Nice dono, says, in the event of a guilty finding, is it likely that President Trump would be remanded to jail while his legal team files for the world's most obvious appeal case? Are there emergency filings that would impact that? Yeah, but they wouldn't. So they'd still be slow. I mean, he'd still sit in custody. So technically, yes. If the jury comes back and finds him guilty on any of these, the judge could take him into custody immediately at that moment. Right then. Boom. All right. You've now been convicted. You're going in. And then set sentencing later. Just set sentencing in 30 days, get some pretrial reports from probation and sentencing memo from the government, sentencing memo from the defense. But as long as it's going to be asked, as long as someone's asking for prison or for jail, they could theoretically take him in. Will they? I doubt it. I don't think they'll do that. That's even too big for them. They'd rather, it would make him a total martyr and it would cause total chaos for them. So I think the stronger play would be to just say, well, we're being graceful. We're being merciful. And we're just going to put you on probation, lock you down at home at Mar-a-Lago. You can't leave for 6 months. That will extend it between now and the election. But yeah, I mean, so my point is if they took him into custody, yeah, Trump could file some motions, but he's still going to sit in custody. Just think, provided that he's like every other defendant. Secret Service is there, and I don't think they're going to let that happen, but they could. They could go down. They would love it, I think, if they could. A lot of people on the left, finally, bond for awareness. What's up? Says hilarious. NBC 5 p.m. News in Chicago, Illinois, shared a portion of the jury instructions. Judge Mercan may not share them. However, the news sure did. Oh, yeah, we went through the whole thing. Everybody should know what the instructions are, including the jurors. The fact that they don't is because the judge is trying to obfuscate the truth from them. Salty Sarge on Rumble says, is it just me or is the judge's instructions are a failed and not so veiled attempt to clean up this farce and deliver the verdict desired? Yeah, it's paint by numbers. He's drawing out exactly what they can do. Just choose this crime, just choose that crime, or just choose that crime. 3 options. And if you choose door number 2, there are subcomponents to that. Pick any one of these. You got 4 options there. William J. says Snopes has admitted that Biden shower stuff is a big no-no over there. Snopes agrees. Expect Biden to lash out against Trump and his supporters. Again, Biden is going to do his old screaming gates of hell MAGA speech. Arrgh. Hey, what's up, Lenny Malley? Hey, what's up? We got some good likes. Lenny Malley says, please like and share and subscribe to this channel. Great reminder, Lenny. Thanks for subscribing. You know, something like 50% of the people who watch here are not subscribed. It fluctuates, but it's between about 40 to 50% who watch our content, not subscribed at all. It's interesting. I wonder why you guys hate me so much. Hey, what's up? Shadway says, how is it a campaign contribution if Cohen is supposed to have gotten paid back? Well, they're saying that Cohen made that to Trump. Cohen made that basically made that it was a campaign benefit. He should have listed it as a campaign contribution. If it would have been listed, he would have been able to make it. That's their argument, but it's not a campaign contribution. It's not illegal. FEC already looked into it. What's up? Tree Climber in the house. Bringing in 5 new members. RT's coming in. Thank you, Tree Climber. Judge Mental is in the house. Not to be confused with Judge Mercan. Terry H. We got Colas here and Beaky in the house, courtesy of Tree Climber. Very nice to see you, Tree Climber. Thanks for bringing in the new members. What's up? Mrs. Mom says, are they trying to start a revolution? They might be trying to cause something to pop off. I think they would be very happy if there was another insurrection. They jail Trump. There's an insurrection. FBI says, see, I told you so. They lock down social media again, and the election is stolen once again. What's up? Cliff Norman on Locals says, in business, such a document as these instructions would be labeled as a baffling them with BS. Great comment, Cliff. Baffle with BS. Not giving them a copy of the document confirms the intent of the judge, which is to confuse the jury. In the section of crimes, what happened to the crimes? Collusion was defined, from Cliff Norman. Yeah, try giving someone who's never played the game of chess instructions on playing the game of chess, and then put a bunch of people in a room and say, figure it out. You've never seen a chessboard before, right? This is people's first time in a criminal courtroom. And they get these very complex concepts and no rules that they can follow, no manual. It's meant to confuse them. So they just peter out and just convict. Even split. They don't care. Judge doesn't care if they split, whatever. Tony Hay Munkett says, we, the jury, find Trump president 2024. Suckers. That's the verdict. The verdict is, Trump is your president, Judge. Eat it! John B. says, the Rings of the Thought Police from 1984. This Rings of the Thought Police from 1984. Membo for 5 months, John. Glad to have you here as a membo. Thanks for being here. What's up, Jackie C? 13 months as a membo, a full year and then some. Says, I'm worried about the alternate jurors, Rob. No trust. Well, that's a fair, yeah. We're kind of worried about them all until we have more data. Good to see you, Jackie. 13 months as a membo. Great to have you. Hey, Jack Mack is here. Nice dono. Says, I jumped in a little late. The judge didn't allow any testimony about the applicable FEC law during the trial. Is the jury allowed to request that information during their deliberations? No. No. The judge gave them the instructions on the law. So that's it. That's it. They're not going to be able to go out and ask clarifying questions about what another expert would say, or basically anything extrinsic is not coming in now. That's all done. So there are questions about the law. How does the law work? Or how does this work? He'll probably just say, refer you back to the instructions. The same things we just read. So there will not be any clarifications on that, I would expect. I mean, he might clarify what the instructions say or what the instructions mean, but nothing else is coming in. So yeah, that's the part of my concern. And they were not even told, I don't think, that the feds turned this down. They declined to prosecute it. Don't even think that came out. What's up, Pian Cag, a new supporter over on the YouTubes. Great to have you. I'd rather be skiing says, we all know the real first note to the judge was, to judge from jury, you are a loser. Respectfully, the jurors. 4-person number 1. Yeah, I could see something like that. Hey, judge, you have something in your teeth. He's like, oh, really? Oh, damn it. The jury needs more time. And I have to go to the bathroom. Jim Stem says such a sham trial all around. And I think people are recognizing that across, even CNN. We've been playing some clips about this. And they seem also deflated. Even if he comes out and he's convicted, they're all going to go, they're going to know how dirty and gross they are. JC, haven't felt so much like praying in lots of years. A hung jury or an acquittal would be just incredible. Could you imagine? What's up, Darkside Digital? Prayers are always appropriate. Darkside says, judicial temperament. Is that the same temperament that per Dershowitz that the judge threatened to throw out Costello's entire testimony, violating Trump's Sixth Amendment right all over the place? Yeah, the judge has... Weissmann was very happy with the judge's temperament because when he shouts at Trump's defense, it gets him really excited. You know, he's like, oh yeah. Kind of like dirty talk. He's like, oh yeah, I love when you scold Trump. Weissmann gets all excited. Gross. NY says, the totality of this setup, total Star Chamber feeling here. Choose a crime violates the Sixth Amendment, the ability to confront your accusers. Yeah, the confrontation clause. It's a due process problem. Also, how can you have due process when you don't know what the charges are? You have to have notice so you can prepare your defense. What's up, NY? We got this from Plantation Sensation says, we need to keep up with this judge's career after this trial. He's clearly biased, and I wonder what motivates that behavior, if you catch my drift. Yeah, money, Power, he's in New York. He goes to the cocktail parties. Everyone calls him a hero. He thinks he's saving America. The usual things. Probably a bunch of money. Daughter's got $100 million being funneled in from Democrats. He's probably living pretty nice off that too. So yeah, he'll be around. He's got Bannon coming up. And if it's a hung jury here, he might have the Trump trial again. St. Floyd's Banana. What's up, St. Floyd's Banana? Good to have you here. Says, keep telling the truth, brother. Thank you, St. Floyd. And thanks for the dono. Confused Abyssinian Cat in the house with a nice dono. Thank you for that one, Mr. Cat. We got NY Renal. Says, Democrats let the genie out of the bottle. Just like in Ohio, they assume Republicans will behave like McCain Republicans, roll over, go along scared of the liberal press. Well, the current party doesn't give two number signs what the media thinks any longer. We have our own media. Yeah, and they're scrambling. They're very nervous about that. Why aren't people listening to me? Have you seen Don Lemon's show on YouTube? It's boring. It's bad. What's up? Knox is here. Happy Wednesday, all. I got here late, but saw that the jury had questions. This is a good sign. Knox is a defense attorney in Texas, so this opinion carries a lot of gravitas. Says they are thinking about it. It's always good news. We like when they're thinking. Better than not thinking. You don't want a bunch of automatons who, oh, guilty, guilty, guilty. Hey, it's the Munkets bringing in 5 new membos. What's up? Welcome aboard. Gundam E. We got North Star, David M, Matt G's coming in, and Chiro Knight, all gifted membos. Courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets bringing in new membos. We got Crash 2 Contrary on Locals says, the left is growing some really big feet. After the Trump conviction, they'll need a size 14 shoe, and when the non-left justice system drops the hammer on them, they'll realize that the justice system is going to force those 14s into a size 8, and they're not going to like the fit. From Crash. That's a fun one. Thank you for that one, Crash. Yeah, there's a lot of angles we could go on that one, but yeah, they're sowing the seeds of destruction for not only, Trump is their effort, but it's going to wreck the justice system. And I think there will be a pendulum swing that goes the other way, and they're not going to be happy when it comes back. Zulu, what's up, Zulu? Being a membo, bringing in new membos. We got Sparky's coming in, courtesy of Zulu. Timothy C, we got Shadow Wings, Jacob Z, Carol M, Manuel R, Florida Mom. We have Joel VR and AB, all gifted membos, courtesy of Zulu, and some shout outs for Zulu for bringing in the membos. Thanks, Zulu, for bringing in 10 new membos, and welcome aboard, new friends. Curtis B, 23 months. That's almost 2 full years. We've seen some serious business here. Trump wins no matter what. Jump ship lefties, Rob and mods. I agree. I think Trump wins. No, he's winning already. It's not working out for them. It's like, oh, are they going to indict him again? I don't think so. Alexandra, what's up, Alexandra? Says, Rob, have you ever reviewed some of the statements from the White House? They're actually hilarious. I painfully read through their recent ones about China tariffs. No joke, they said the word unfair 17 times. I know 9-year-olds that could write better essays. Yeah, you're right about that. Not really. I know what you're talking about. The White House press releases and their statements about stuff that they do that's amazing. It probably resembles what we read from Jay Bratt, which I think we'll probably talk about that tomorrow if they're still deliberating. But yeah, they write like whiny children. It's unfair and it's unjust, and they're talking about FBI safety and the dignity and how much they care and how they're honorable and all this. So what? Speak like an adult, okay? This is not a novel from 7th grade whatever classes. What's up, Boopsy? Do the jury members get a written copy of the closing arguments? No. They're not getting written copies of anything, it sounds like. What's up, Rob? On Rumble says, if Trump is found guilty, he can appeal. If the jury acquits Trump, will Democrats accept the decision? No, they'll probably blame it on Putin. Do you think the Democrats will say, well, I guess justice was done? Of course not. But to be fair, neither will we. We're not going to come out here and say, but they have it as rigged as it could get. If they don't get an acquittal on this, I'm sorry, a guilty on all counts when it's this rigged, that's bad. Don Goff, 3 months as a membo says, thanks for your explanations, Rob. Thank you, Don. Thanks for being here. For being a membo for 3 months. First couple months are the hardest. It gets easier from there. What's up, Sheila P? Bringing in a bunch of new membos, 10 coming in. Dan N. We got Dixon G. Rial is here. HD Warrior. Lawful Axe. Strawberries coming in. DY3116. John S. Episcopos H. Michael C. And others coming in courtesy of Sheila P. 10 new membos in the house. Thank you, Sheila. And welcome aboard, new friends. Van Songs, membo for 6 months, 2/3 of the way to a baby, was gifted in December, stuck around for the smart people. So how cool is that? You can string together 6 months or 9 months of membos just by being here every day. Amazing, Van. Glad you're here. ELZ says the jury should request a crystal ball and a spiritual medium so that they can have a seance. Yeah, with like a Ouija board. Not N-O-T-G-U. Yeah. Judge Mercant comes in and smashes the board. Ah! Get a different board. Knox is here. Says Jonathan Turley noted the state was testifying at close, stating that the election occurred over and over again, that election fraud occurred over and over again. Yeah, it sounded like that, and none of that was proven. There was no evidence of any of that. The judge could have said it was investigated and declined by the feds, but didn't do that. What's up, Flash River is in the house on local. Says, Rob, is it true that the DOJ and Alvin Bragg withheld exculpatory evidence from Trump's defense? Specifically testimony from Robert Costello prior to his testimony in the New York City trial. If so, wouldn't that constitute grounds for a mistrial? Yeah, if we were playing with fair rules, something like that would constitute a mistrial. But we're not. This is not a gentlemanly game of law. It's like when you get into a fight with another dude, you know, ideally you're not gouging each other's eyeballs out or kicking each other in the nads. If it's just a friendly, you got to settle something. Unless you're trying to murder each other, then it's, you know, all bets are off. But my point is, there's no nad kicking. Here, they don't care in New York. They just do whatever they want. Nads, eyeballs, scratching, like little just wieners. But when you say, hey, you keep kicking us in the nads, they say, no, we're not. We're not kicking you in the nads at all. What are you talking about? No, this is justice. We're fighting for America. As they're kicking you in the nads, just repeatedly. And then many people on the right are like, well, how come this is not appealable or something? Well, because the judges are enabling the nad kicking. But your point is right. In a real system of governance, yes, they did hide information. Robert Costello testified to the grand jury. He said he had tons of emails that he gave over to the government and that they never included it or presented it to the grand jurors, which would have been exculpatory for them. So yeah, it's prosecutorial misconduct. I think as J.D. Vance says, they should be charged with crimes. Hopefully they are. For conspiracy to influence an election. They're bringing lawfare attacks to stop a presidential candidate from having success. Great comment, Flash. Now, No Cowakin says, love you, Rob, and the people on this site praying for brothers and sisters in New York to make the right decision, which is an acquittal. From our friend No Cowakin on Locals. And amen to that. Hey, we'd love to see it. We're just also being realistic. But I think either way, Trump is pretty good at creating an environment where he wins either way. He's been doing this for years, and it's pretty impressive how he always does it. Even when he looks like he's down and out and everything is failing, somehow he captures attention, he captures energy, and he's winning. He's still up in the polls. It's crazy. What's going on? We got some great comments over on X. We're going to say hello quickly and then go on over to Locals. What's up, Mike, Arizona? We got Archival Engineer. How do you hide jury instructions? Well, he just doesn't release, he doesn't give them a copy, so they're not around. This judge will face 12 jurors himself. What is the name of the X page that covers the court hearings? Probably Inner City Press. Judge Mercant might as well just say, just keep deliberating until you find Trump guilty. Anubis says, hey, Rob, you do great work. You're the only Hey, what a nice comment. What a nice comment from Anubis. Thank you for saying that, Anubis. Man, that's such a nice comment, Anubis. I really appreciate that. You know, I used to do the same thing with people I listen to, in particular, Rush Limbaugh, rest in peace. So that's a nice compliment. And I used to kind of queue up his shows before I'd go out and clean pools. Good times. What's up, Anubis? Really a nice compliment. It means a lot. Tony says, so when Mercon threw everyone out of the courtroom over the objections of the press threatening to strike the testimony, that's in the dictionary. Weissmann, you like that? Good to see you, Tony. Emery says the judge's instructions seem to suggest find the crime, then find him guilty. Could this judge replace a single juror? He wouldn't be able to do that intentionally, but I mean, if something like happened, like if a bad juror gets in a car accident or something, like, uh-oh, we have an alternate now. Yeah, there are lawyers on the jury, says Shakes, but I don't think it's going to help. I think lawyers, first of all, unless you're a criminal lawyer, you're not going to know anything about this type of law. Secondly, unless you're a criminal defense lawyer, you're probably still going to be beholden to government propaganda, and lawyers are very good at twisting themselves into pretzels. That's why lawyers need lawyers. What's up? Shakes is in the house. Penny Candy says, love listening to your show. Really helps. Rob's over there. Crypto nerds coming in from Texas. Feline Fun says, if Trump is found guilty, how quickly can they escalate it? Well, immediately, but it would still take time to process, right? So let's say Trump goes into custody at like 4 p.m. They file their appeal. Court of Appeals won't process it till the next day, maybe 2 days. So he's still in custody pending their outcome. What's up, James? Hilarious from Fred Pedamonte. Kelly Sell now says the morning suit jacket stream was Rob gently setting me up for a guilty verdict. Still hopeful for common sense New Yorkers. That's funny. I wore a jacket today on our members only morning stream. Sometimes I like to class it up a little bit, especially for our membos, you know. Make it a little bit more sophisticated in here. So I wore a jacket this morning. It felt pretty good. I thought it looked pretty good too. Came across well on camera. Hey, Barbs. What's up, Barbs? Says, I made it on a live. It's been a while. We're glad that you're here. JD Sharp says there's at least one very vocal and informative person on the jury. And Fred Pedamonte says, I read a few places Secret Service has talked to the jail about this. We saw that this morning. We talked about it on our members only morning stream today. Hey, did you guys see Stormy Daniels and Robert De Niro got together? Did you guys see this? This is the Stormy Daniels Robert De Niro love child. Here's what it looks like. Stormy De Niro. Absolutely hideous. One of the worst things I've ever seen here on this channel. Wow, it's awful. What's going on? All right, so that came across over on Locals. Shout out to John. Thanks for sharing that and ruining every single pixel on our screens. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you want to join us, you'll have a lot more images like that to burn your retina out of your eye socket. So we're going over there. We also have our website, robertgovea.com, which is where we have our PDFs. So anything that we reviewed today will be posted up over there at robertgovea.com. We also have watcherlodge.com, our sovereignty and self-development community, and we're having our event in Vegas, June 29th, and I've got the contract sitting in my inbox right now. I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to be great. We're going to have a nice lunch. It's going to be fun. So come and join us. Come and join us, watcherlodge.com. We're going to Vegas 1 month from today. Oh my gosh, it's 1 month from today. Woo! I didn't even realize that. 1 month away, Watcher Meetup. And only RSVP if you're serious about coming. There will be a small fee to cover food and room. So I'll let you know about that, but it'll be worth it. We're gonna have a nice, it's gonna be nice. It's Trump style, baby. The food's expensive, golly. Anyways, it's gonna be good. So check it out, watcherlodge.com. We're going to Vegas. And if you have a little extra spending money, maybe we'll do something later on in the evening. We'll see. But my friends, okay, so that is it for us on the day. Go to Watcher Lodge if you want to learn more about the Vegas trip. We want to thank our mods and our meme smiths who help mod the fort down for us and keep things nice and orderly. We got K-Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu. We got Janek, Dog Digger, Economy Pilot, Donut Mind Me, Carrie B. Didn't I already say Zulu? Oh, that was Zach Nichols. Oh, sorry, it was two Z's. I got confused there. Zach Nichols in the house, Carrie B. and our friend Zulu in the house. Shout out to our meme smith, Sleepy Dog Lee, Nathan N810, Geegum Geegum, and Glocky McLock with Doc Master Elliott modding and meme-ing down the fort for us, keeping things nice and orderly. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Members, locals, stick around. We're, of course, coming over there to hang for a bit. But we will be back here, my friends, tomorrow to get into it again. We've got jury deliberations underway. We'll see if we have a verdict. If we do, we might be jumping on impromptu status to break it down immediately. But that is it for us on the day. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to invite you to join us back here tomorrow. Same time, same place to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.